Can't have a Veterans Day ceremony without Old Glory. All right. Thank you for coming, everybody. And for this time where we can say a big thank you to all of our veterans. I ask you to please rise, those who are able, for the national anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. Now we will have the playing of the Armed Forces Medley. We do ask that for those of you who are veterans, when the anthem of your branch is played, we ask you to please stand or raise your arm as you're able to so we can recognize each branch of the military. Thank you. All right, thank you. So a large part of our ceremony today will actually be a discussion with a resident, one from each branch of the military. And we want to put the audience in the mind of what it's like to be a service member. Doesn't necessarily mean they all were in combat. It means that they were there ready for the call. And we want to pay honor to them, understand what it was like, hear their stories, each very different from the other, And so we will invite our panel to the front. If you'd make your way to the chairs, Paul Kidder of the USMC, George Pisacano of the Coast Guard, George Reiner of the Army, Jerry Shin, Air Force, and Roy Stetler, Navy. Please make your way to the front. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me in the front. I will say that there was a lot of hesitancy when I was asking the various members to come up and join. A lot of them felt like, well, I'm not a hero. I don't have any grand war stories or such. Again, we're grateful that they were there, ready for the call, and we want to hear what it was like to be in the service, and not always knowing what tomorrow will look like. One of the first questions that I wanted to ask was about how they became members of the service in the first place. I want to be careful about the way I asked that. I remember a while back I'd asked a World War II vet, so what made you volunteer? And he said, oh, I didn't volunteer. He said, I got a very nice letter from the president inviting me to join. But I wanted to know if anyone here is willing to talk about how they found themselves in the service in the first place. Anybody willing to start us off? What made you join in the first place?
Yeah, I'll do that. I graduated from high school in 1951. I went to Washington, went to work in the Navy Yard in a 4-year program to be an electronics mechanic. Halfway through that, the state of Maryland sent me a draft notice. And my uncle says to me, if you get drafted, you're going to go in Vietnam and give a rifle. He says, you ought to join the Air Force. So I did, and I went and joined the Air Force. Of course, I got 4 years in the Air Force. It would have been only 2 in the Army.
I'm a little different. I graduated from college in 1956. I went to work. I was ready to be promoted to another job, and all of a sudden they asked me, before we promote you, you have to service. You have to go to service. So I volunteered for the draft at that time.
Anybody else? Try that one, and trade me. I have batteries.
1, 2, check. Yes, this is Roy Stetler. I had joined the military reserves, the Naval Air Reserve portion of the work, and then at Naval Air Force Base, Andrews Air Force Base, and Navy worked together. And so when I just said, yes, I'll be glad to do that and serve my country. And so when time came around, we had a weekend, a year, each month, a weekend over at Andrews. And that was always nice and exciting. We learned a lot. The year ended, and we were to go ahead and do the routine of learning and doing what we needed to do. It called the walkthrough, which the shots, X-rays, and everything that's done. I get to sit down next to a doctor, and he says, Roy, and they all called us by our first names. Roy, after he asked me all the questions that I was going to be addressing, one more question, he said, Roy, is there anything you can think of that's going to keep you out of the military? I thought, I hope not, but I had rheumatic fever when I was 5 and a rheumatic heart murmur. He said, oh, that's it. You're kidding, really? And he said, no, we take a strong view on that because we don't want to be responsible for your health. If something goes wrong, it's on us. He was very honest about it. I want you to go see your doctor, by the time that, we're done here, go over there. And my wife was already working in a school teaching third grade, and so she couldn't come and get me. So I had a neighbor, and she and her husband, he was responsible for a lot of this going on with the volunteering work. And so he said, go and get your doctor's report and bring it back before 4 o'clock. And yes, sir, I did that. So he reads that thing. Okay, honorable discharge. Oh, okay. This is the part that has me rattled. Several years later, I learned that my squadron never came back from Vietnam. And here I am. I was saying, Lord, I'm in your hands. This is what I wanted to do, but apparently you planned this a long time ago when I was 5 years old, the rheumatic heart murmur, because they can be very dangerous. If the body is overdone, that can come down and clunk you like a ton of bricks. So that was my story.
Roy, when you were given the notice about the rheumatic fever, was that a disappointment or relief that they were going to discharge you?
Well, it's kind of a disappointment in the way I wasn't going to be able to serve, but then on the other hand, there's me. My mind says, okay, Roy, I don't have a problem with it, me not being accepted, because I know this happens, and when it does, some guys are naturally, and now it's women, but at that time, men were not happy about it. Well, I wasn't jumping up and down with joy because this is my country. I want to serve. So you got the story. I'd be glad to address anything else.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else, Paul or George, what made you find yourself in the service?
Yes, I have to begin by...
Yeah, speak right into, like pointing at your mouth, if you would.
Is that it? I can't see it.
Just speak real close
I
to
have
it.
to begin by telling you I'm a runt of 4 boys. The 3 older brothers of mine served in World War II. And I did the home front while they were gone in high school, and ended up going to college. I managed to get college in between World War II and the Korean War. When I went into my senior year in college, I received a deferment from my notice, and as those 3 did in World War II, I received my notice to go to the Korean War, and I really didn't take a lot of time out of my college in my senior year when the Korean War began in 1950, in June of 1950, and in September of 1950, I went into my senior year. And so it raved, and I got my deferments. And then time came in the spring, and I didn't have much time left on my notice. It was to report soon, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? And so I looked all around. I saw this thing that said Naval Intelligence. And having grown up in the Orient, I thought, okay, so I went into Naval Intelligence. And he said, that is great Chinese. He says, we can use you real well. Go in the next room and write out what you told me. Write out what you told me in Chinese? So I went back to my notice, and they had, we have a special here for the Army because of selective service laws and rules and regulations, and you can go into the Marines if you want. So I picked the Marines because I had associated with Marines in the Orient and knew who they were more or less, and that's how I found myself in the Marines.
Very good. Thank you.
Before I start talking about the Coast Guard, I want to just take a second to mention the United States Merchant Marine. Most people don't give them very much thought, but fact is that in World War II, the Allies never would have won that war without the Merchant Marine. We were supplying supplies to Russia, to France, to England long before the war. Supplies were very needed. They were all brought by Merchant Marine. Through the war, the amount of supplies that were sent over by the Merchant Marine was almost impossible to comprehend. But these merchantmen sailing on the crudest of ships, making the trip across the Atlantic back and forth with almost no protection. There'd be several ships with them. There might be 40 ships, 50 ships in the convoy. If they were attacked, if a ship was damaged, if a ship couldn't make it, if they had engine trouble, convoy just kept going, and that ship was left alone to fend for themselves. Merchantmen, a number of merchantmen that were killed in the war per capita was much higher than any of us would want to believe. So just take a moment as we think about the different military services to think a little bit about the Merchant Marine.
Thank you, George. Very good. Well, I will ask, once you were in the service, did that result in you moving to a different part of the country, even the world? Anybody like to share? Jerry?
Yeah, after basic training in New York, I went to Mississippi and went through several courses in electronics and radar. After that, they sent me to New Mexico, and guess what? I trained in the atomic bomb, the one that was dropped over Japan. After that, I trained in the hydrogen bomb, the first operational hydrogen bomb. Then I went to Massachusetts to a SAC base, and for the next 3 years, I helped provide hydrogen bombs to those B-36s.
When I went in the service, I went first down into Columbia, South Carolina, Fort Jackson. The best part of Fort Jackson was I met my wife, future wife. When I got back from service in Germany, we got married.
And you, Jerry, you served in what years? What years did you serve?
What years? 53, 58, and then I was in the active reserve for 2 more years. And while I was in Massachusetts, that's where I met my wife, Barbara.
And George, what about you?
I was in Germany for 19 months, and I served 2 years in active duty, and the other 4, 6 years, I guess, I was in reserves. However, I never did anything.
Okay. Anybody else? Did your service result in you moving to a different part of the country, part of the world? Anybody like to share? Okay. Now, for anybody on this side, how long were you in the service?
I had gone into the Coast Guard Reserve, served 6 months active duty, and then 7 years of active reserve. That included going to weekly meetings, and then 2 weeks a year serving on active duty. Nice part of it is that I made 5 cruises, one to Puerto Rico, and 2 cruises to Bermuda. So that was kind of pleasant. Cruises were all work. We were training all the time. Some of the things that I'd learned and I was interested in navigation, so I was up on the bridge. Learned about all of the different exercises on a ship. General quarters. I was trained on a 40 millimeter quad 40 as a loader. I learned how to steer a ship in ice. Learned we went through drills on airplanes, ditching and rescue. Went through those drills that would run day and night. Actually was on board a ship when we got notice that an airplane trying to get to Miami was in a position where they were having engine problems and might ditch in the ocean about 30 miles from where we actually were. We set a course for them, broke out all amazing equipment as if we were going to actually take part in a search and rescue. They were able to get an air escort and did make it back to Miami without our assistance. In the reserves, the big training was to just be prepared if you were called to go onto any ship and be able to function. And I thought I could do that very well.
Some of the spots that you found yourself in, like, did it feel like a vacation when you're in those certain areas, or?
Yeah, to spend time in Bermuda in the summertime was beautiful. San Juan, we spent part of January in San Juan. That was also very nice. The problem was getting there and back because you'd be training, 8 hours a day, and sometimes it'd be hot and muggy. Other times you'd be out there in the pouring rain. So you paid a little price for the enjoyment that you had.
The Georgia on this side, what was it like in Germany? What years were you there, and what was it like?
Let's see, I was there from about 1957 until 1959. Germany, when I went there, I had played soccer at the University of Maryland, and I had offered to play soccer for the 7th Army. My captain said I'm too important, so he wouldn't let me go, which was a disappointment. Although I did say to him, you owe me. And so basically he took care of me from that point on for the next 18 months or so. Germany, I was in a direct support company, which I found out later on was destroyed pretty much entirely 2 times during World War II. So it wasn't, not only did the company take care of equipment, but it also had to fight battles at the same time. So basically in the 2 years I was there, or 19 months really, I was alerted twice. One was for Beirut, and also another one's up in Berlin. So actually I saw no active duty whatsoever as far as battle, but we were on bivouac on several occasions and were waiting to be called up. Again, this was for 19 months, basically all time in Germany. I was able to take some trips, many trips really. So basically I saw a lot of Germany and Austria, and actually before I was discharged back to the States, I had an opportunity to go stay another year or go back to States, and I could have gone up to Norway. I chose to go home.
Now, I heard from a couple of you that your time in the service actually resulted in you meeting your spouses. I'd like to know what it was like to be, did the service disrupt your life plans? Did it disrupt your daily life that you maybe even enjoyed, and now this was a whole other mode of life you had to deal with? Can anybody speak to that?
Actually, my plans were disrupted when I was told I either complete my service or not get promoted. So I decided to go into the Army for the 2 years. I learned a lot while I was in the Army because I did various positions, so I can't complain about that. However, being in the Army also changed my mind to what I wanted to do for a life. So I went back to my former job, which I was left 2 years earlier, and I lasted 1 year when I changed again to change my vocation.
The Air Force didn't disrupt my life, it enhanced my life because it enabled me to go on and get a bachelor's degree in physics because of the background I had in the military. And when I got that with all the top secret clearances I had, CIA came after me and hired me, and I was with them for 30 years.
Okay. Was there ever a moment during your time in the service where you felt like I'm in real danger right now. Anybody ever have a moment?
The closest I would have come to that, if you remember, around 1961, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were several Russian ships coming down the coast. The United States was trying to turn them around. If they had almost reached Cuba, we were going to go into a blockade of Cuba. I remember driving up. I was driving a truck up First Avenue in New York City, and every traffic light I didn't have a radio. You'd call out to the taxi next to you, or the truck or passenger car, and they'd ask, are the ships still coming? I got home that night, and as soon as I walked in the door, my wife said to me, you got a call from your captain, and he wants you to call back as soon as I get in the house. So I called him back, and he said that if we go to a blockade of Cuba, that the Coast Guard was looking to have 150 or 200 reservists called in for quartermasters called in for duty, and I was prepared. Sea bag was always packed, and you're ready to go. Fortunately, the ships were turned around, and we never had to have that experience. But for about 24 hours there, it was you may get called. That's what the reserves were all about.
Well, to wrap up, I'd like to hear how did your time of service end? For those who haven't already remarked on that, Paul, how did your time with the Marines come to an end?
I started off at Paris Island, went from there to Camp Lejeune, and from Camp Lejeune, not all danger is in combat, There can be danger in training too. And I want to tell you real quickly about a live grenade that I threw, and it knocked off my helmet. And the grenade went over in the mud pit where it belonged. But the helmet went over into the booth next door. And these fellows next door were waiting for that thing to go off. And they were crouched down like this, and the helmet came in on their backs. And they came up over the top real white. So if that grenade hadn't gone off, there would have been an explosion of several Marines. And I threw it, and I knew it was going to go off. The war seemed to diminish somewhat, and
please remind us, which war was that, Paul?
Korean War. Korean War was over with, and they signed in July of 1953, and starting in April and May and June, it was diminishing. The combat was diminishing rapidly, and we knew it was going to be a close down. And I got transferred from Camp Lejeune to Quantico. My home was in College Park, Maryland, so you can't beat that. And I did the last 3 or 4 months in Quantico, waiting for my discharge. And 2 weeks after I was discharged, I was married. And I was married with a diploma in one hand. I still had it. And my discharge in the other hand, and nothing else. And I married my sweetheart from college, and she had a diploma in her hand. And we set out together. We had the whole world to ourselves, and nowhere to go and nothing to do. But we managed quite well. We ended up at Carroll Lutheran Village.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? All right, can we have a round of applause for our panelists? You may rejoin the audience. Thank you. mics and stay on the chairs. Thank you very much. All right, and if you'd please rise and join us for the singing of America the Beautiful. Lyrics are inside your program. Thank you. You may be seated. Now, you may have noticed there are some large exhibits in the back of the room for World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. They were provided by the Hope and Peace Foundation, and Chuck Ritz in the back of the room is the one responsible for setting them all up, as well as the rolling 9/11 Maryland Memorial in our parking lot. I hope you'll take a moment to see. I've asked Chuck to come up and say a few words of what got this all started and why, and what it's all about. So if you please give him your attention.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chuck Ritz. As Jordan said, I'm the founder and president of the Hope and Peace Foundation, and we began 10 years ago. Next year will be our 10th anniversary. Our mission is to preserve the past and educate the future. So with our exhibit behind you, that's a portion of it. We created that last year on Veterans Day at the Towson American Legion, and we want to share the stories all the way back to the Revolutionary War of how we fought for our freedom from England, and how we've continued to put ourselves in conflicts for peace and to preserve our freedoms. Preserving the past, educating the freedom, or educating the future means that we want to be able to preserve our past and to teach the generations that are here now and forever in our future to be able to learn our history and to be able to understand what the service and sacrifice it takes to keep our freedoms. And I'm not a veteran, I'm not a first responder, but I'm a proud American for people like you that have given me the benefit to enjoy those freedoms. Our rolling memorial outside we unveiled on the 15th anniversary of 9/11. And with that as well, it tells the 9/11 timeline. At the time we unveiled the memorial on the 15th anniversary, there was 69 Marylanders known to be killed that morning. In the last 2 years, we have found 5 more. So next year on the 22nd, 23rd anniversary, we will switch out that plaque and add those 5 names to it so that they will always be remembered. On the war side, it shares the story, the names of the 158 Marylanders who have made the ultimate sacrifice since 9/11 in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and around the world. And people, with the younger generation, there are 73 million Americans that are too young to remember or weren't even born 22 years ago, almost a quarter of our population today. So it's important that we preserve our past and we share the stories. And what we're trying to teach with our rolling memorial, we have another exhibit called America's 9/11 Living Classroom, is we want to be able to share the stories of how we all came together after 9/11. Not of the evil that we witnessed. There's enough of that in the world, and for our veterans, you realize that and you know that. But what we're trying to teach the younger generation and those who are with us today and tomorrow is of the unity, the patriotism, compassion, heroism, all that we witnessed 22 years ago, and how we came together no matter what we looked like, how we dressed, how we spoke. We were all Americans. And we will continue to be Americans as long as we have people like you fighting and defending our country and our nation and to protect our freedom. So this exhibit, for those, in the last 2 years, I've collected over 800 pieces of military items, the uniforms, medals, letters, because each piece shares a story and tells a story. And that's the important part of our mission. And we continue to do that, and we'll continue to expand the exhibit. It's called The Price of Freedom in our America's 9/11 Living Classroom. We have over 100 artifacts from Ground Zero and the Pentagon and personal items. And again, with our war exhibit and the 9/11 exhibit, each one shares a story. And every one we tell, that means that person that something belonged to will not be forgotten. And we do a candlelight vigil every year on 9/11. And I always tell people, it's like, we read the names, we'll toll the bell 258 times for those remembered on the 9/11 memorial, because they say a person dies twice, once when they pass and once when they are forgotten. And if we read the names and share the stories, those of us will never be forgotten. So for all of our veterans, thank you. I appreciate your service and my freedom, and everyone here today, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, to be amongst heroes. So thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Chuck. And now we're going to ask two members from the Carroll County Bureau of Aging and Disabilities to speak for a few moments about possible benefits that are available to our veterans and their families. So if you please welcome Bobby Lawrence and Rick Pollard.
We'll use this microphone so you can hear us. Good afternoon, my name's Bobby. It was wonderful, the panel discussion. We really appreciated hearing your stories, and we thank you for your service. I'm going to leave most of this to Rick Pollard. He's a veteran service officer at the Bureau of Aging and Disabilities where I work, and I oversee several programs. But I have to say my most favorite is our Veteran Services Program. We have 3 trained program coordinators, or also known as Veteran Service Officers, who assist veterans in conjunction with the Maryland Department of Veteran Affairs to submit claims for pensions and pensions and compensation, and to help link to VA healthcare and see for what benefits a military service member or a family member may be entitled. We also have a staff member who helps veterans who might be experiencing crisis or hardships when it comes to maybe experiencing homelessness or have other needs for which they're facing. And some of you I met before. We have a veteran shuttle. It used to be called the Mad Dog Shuttle, that can assist veterans if you go down to one of the healthcare clinics in Baltimore or Loch Raven or Martinsburg or Fort Detrick to go for free. So this is a little roundabout of what we do. I'm going to let Rick talk a little bit more specifically. And again, it's great seeing everybody here today.
Good afternoon, folks. My name again is Rick Pollard. I am a Veteran Services Officer. I'm also a retired Senior Master Sergeant with the United States Air Force after 22 years. I recently came to work for Bobby as a Veteran Services Officer. I'm accredited with the VA, kind of dual-hatted. I work for Carroll County. My job is to assist veterans, dependents, and spouses to get the benefits that they so rightly deserve. And we're here to tell you a little bit about that process and how we can help you. First, I'd like to thank our veteran panelists. It's great hearing those stories. I salute each and every one of you for your service and wish you the very best. I'd also like to give a special shout out to Chuck Ritz, for the great work that you're doing, telling the story of 9/11 and the other sacrifices and services our servicemen have provided. Let me just provide you a quick, I guess, high-level overview of some of the benefits that are available and how we might be able to help you. We do a variety of things for veterans. And first of all, let me back up. I know there's a number of veterans in here. And I see a lot of other folks here. Are there any surviving spouses of veterans here? Spouses of veterans who have passed away? I see one lady. Okay, so we also assist you folks as well, primarily and I think most seniors are interested in what's called a special pension that the VA provides for veterans and surviving spouses. And basically there's two types of pensions that we can help you with to secure. One of those is a special pension where a surviving spouse has a veteran who passed away from a service-connected injury or condition. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure there's many of you that fall into that category, but there may be others here that would fall into the general category where you might be eligible for a financial pension, where you're below the threshold that's established by the government, where you may be eligible for a pension. The threshold is pretty low, and there's some requirements for that. Number one, there's a net worth threshold that you have to meet. You can't exceed a certain amount of net worth, and your income has to be under a certain level. But what's nice about that is that you can subtract or deduct from your income out-of-pocket expenses, out-of-pocket medical expenses, to get you below that threshold. And we work with seniors all the time to meet that eligibility to secure a pension. It's a rather long process, but we do most of the work. There's a lot of paperwork. There's some financial reporting. There's some disclosures, but it may be worthwhile. So 2 pensions, the special pension and the general pension. The other thing that we might be able to help you with is a disability claim. If you suffered a injury or developed a condition when you were in the military, and you think that you're entitled to a compensation from the VA, we can process that paperwork for you. Since we've been in business over the last 10 years, Carroll County residents, veterans, we've secured over $65 million for our veterans in Carroll County for compensation and pension benefits. It's pretty significant. So we have 3, as Bobby mentioned, we have 3 part-time veteran services officers that assist. Did someone say a question? No? That assist veterans in processing claims and answering questions. We'd love to help you. We'll leave some business cards and other information if you want to reach out. So besides the pension, the compensation claims, there's also VA health care that you may be eligible for. There are some qualifying requirements for that. Generally, you had to serve on active duty during a wartime period. Many, like most, didn't actually serve in combat, and that's not a requirement. You only had to serve on active duty. So if you're interested in VA health care, we can certainly sign you up for that. As Bobby mentioned, we have a shuttle that runs every day that leaves the 5 sites.
We have 3 different sites, or they can pick up at here.
Yeah, well, that shuttle will take you to a VA hospital or clinic and bring you right back the same day. So that's a service that we provide. We have a lot of veterans that utilize that. So if you're interested and need that kind of transportation, we can assist you there as well. The last thing I want to mention is that we also assist with cemetery benefits, burial benefits. The VA does pay a small nominal amount for burial expenses, up to $2,000 for each veteran. As a veteran, you may be, at your request, buried or interned in a state VA cemetery or even a private cemetery. The VA will reimburse you or a loved one some of those costs. They will also provide a marker or a headstone at no cost, so we can also assist you with that if so desired. So that's just a few of the services. I don't want to get too in depth with some of that information. Just give you kind of a quick overview. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested in exploring either a compensation disability, a pension, VA medical, or other benefits. And like I said, we'll leave our cards and contact information. Just as in passing, are there any questions or comments that we could address real quickly? Well, I want to thank you for your service and time. We salute you and wish you all the very best. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Rick and Bobby. And lastly, if you'd like to please stand up for the singing of God Bless America as we're nearing the end of our ceremony. Well, again, a big thank you to all of our veterans and their families. Thank you for coming out. Please remember there's hot cocoa in the back corner. Please stop by the Veterans Services table near the door. Please see the exhibits by the Hope and Peace Foundation, as well as the rolling 9/11 memorial outside. And can we have a big thank you for Linda on piano? Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.